Hello, and welcome to the Gauntlet Podcast. My name is Lowell. On the podcast here, each month we look back at games played by people on the Gauntlet, and we also talk with a guest about that, and we do that in a couple of segments. This month I'm joined by a returning guest co-host, Rich Rogers.
Hey, Lowell. It's good to be back on with you, man.
It is most excellent. And then, super excited, today we have as our special guest a Gauntlet veteran, a GM and player, and a dabbler, designer, and hacker, Luis Paulo Fajais. Very excited. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm also incredibly nervous. Even though I'm not on screen, I feel like I'm giving an interview to the local news.
It's all good. It's all good.
It is a local news of lovely gamers.
It is the most local of local news. We have like a public access, a tiny little station that we broadcast out of. Each month, as I said, we talk about games that we've played in or run on the Gauntlet Hangouts throughout the previous month. So we are, this month, talking about August still?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Wow. Rich, I'm going to have you start out by telling us about what you played and then what game you want to focus in on.
You bet. Off Gauntlet, I played in, I've got 2 face-to-face groups now that I live in Minnesota, guys. It's wild. So I got an opportunity to play Demigods PBTA, Jason Mills' game, a fellow Gauntleteer. The One Ring, I'm actually playing in that one, is pretty interesting. Got an opportunity to play a single session of Turn, and I'm hopeful we can get some more in. Ran a good bit of Zombie World and Monster of the Week, and I also got an opportunity to try Die, the RPG.
I have a question for you, Rich. Have you turned around on Zombie World?
I have. So I was really hesitant with the Roll20, and the setup took quite a bit because there are so many pieces to the play mats and the like, and I still have some reservations about that. I think it's a pretty big hurdle, but once we got in and played, it's so good. I mean,
yeah.
I was getting a private message from one of the players during it, like, every scene is so intense, Rich. It's like I'm grinding my teeth. It's good. It's such a good game. On Gauntlet, I ran Apocalypse World Tatooine as part of Star Wars Saturdays. I got the opportunity to play in Spectaculars run by Michael, and I ran With Great Power, and Alexi Sargent ran for Gauntlet Comics Hogwarts the RPG. And Hogwarts is the game that I'd like to talk about. What is Hogwarts the RPG? It's just like it says on the tin. It's the unofficial Harry Potter universe RPG from David Brunel Brugman. He's released it free of charge so that he doesn't get sued out of existence. and he's kind of using the Pottermore idea of fanfic. It uses the Apocalypse engine, and you can see aspects of Mask's DNA in the game from the use of conditions, but there are some pieces of the game that are his own unique design, and he released that as Creative Commons. So you should definitely hop on and download it. It's a 17-page PDF.
Oh, nice.
So what worked for me with Hogwarts is it's really pretty. Like, that's not like faint praise. It's legit, because these 17 pages, the layout is simple. It's evocative of the feel of the Hogwarts setting. And I'm a sucker for 16-page games like Lady Blackbird. And this one kind of gave me those Lady Blackbird feels. The text is written to welcome in folks new to RPGs, walks them through the process, like a numbered process of creating their student and how to play the game. The game itself is very flexible. You can play any of the 4 houses from the films, any grade from 1st year through 7th year, and you can even mix it up if you want, although that can present some challenges because, how do people have classes together if you've got a 4th year and then 7th year, but your table can work that out. There's a comprehensive spell list by grade and a very simple system for which spells your character knows and what they don't. I was a little surprised as an aside, looking at all of the spells, because they all were either mentioned or alluded to in the books, from what I understand. I'm not a Harry Potter fanatic, so just keep that in mind. Man, most of those spells are really mean.
Yes.
Those spells are mean, guys. Like, really punk, like,
Yeah.
and petty. It's weird. It's a whole lot of like violating of consent going on in those spells. But that was the thing that, you know, each table can handle, and, you know, kids being kids, I guess. Oh, another cool thing, you can have a pet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can have a pet. How's that on a plus? I'm sure Louise is with me on having pets in RPGs.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
I'm alright.
Thumbs up from Louise.
Oh,
Yes. There are friendship and rival setups or relationships between the player characters. They're house specific and very clever. Like if you're a Slytherin, the kind of relationships you're going to have with other people is way different than if you're a Gryffindor having friendships and rivals with other people. The narrator, or the GM or MC, but it's narrator in Hogwarts, has a move, award or deduct points from a house with a guide for point values. And it's super helpful and totally on brand. There were times when Alexi would go 10 points to, you know, this house, and we're like, oh man, and we had a running tally in the character keeper of all the points. It was intense, guys. I mean, it was intense. It was 2 sessions, and I'll just say that my house was not winning, and it was very disappointing.
Oh, I must ask, what house were you in, Rich?
Oh, well, so Alexi reskinned this for Gauntlet Comics. So I was effectively the Slytherin version. I think I was pretty Slytherin-y. I was Slytherin-esque. I was snaky. I had a very high loyalty score, but my bravery was in the toilet, so I mostly ran from things. Which is weird because there's actually a move for go and meet a fantastical creature. There's like a legit move, one of the basic moves, which I think is just brilliant because it's like totally Harry Potter, right? There's a whole page of rules for Quidditch, and it's not a big, confusing page of rules. It's just a comprehensive way to emulate that game. We didn't play Quidditch in the 2 sessions I got to play through, but I would have liked to try that. Now, Hogwarts RPG was on a previous episode of Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse. Ding! And in it, David talked about a specific piece of design he created for Hogwarts that I think is a definite highlight of the system. It's the mystery system. I like it because it's a very elegant and broad method to keep track of the mysteries that are ongoing within your game. It's elegant in that the mechanics are at the end of each scene, and though you'll know that this isn't something I always like, but at the end of each scene, there's a quick question of, hey, what are the questions that came up during this particular scene or this portion of play that you guys are really curious about? And then you put that on your mystery board, right? And then it's the job of the entire table to try to reincorporate those mysteries or find answers to them as they continue forward in the game. And I love that because I've seen stuff like that in other RPGs, but this one, to me, feels very expressly open to the table. And I found a lot of times that people, including myself, would look on that particular part of the character keeper and go, well, how can I lean into this thing that somebody else wants to know an answer about? And it was fun to see people be clever and also, you know, tying back in so that those little strings that we say, I want more of this, we would all try to find ways to reincorporate that in or to answer those questions. And that was super fun.
Right.
Now, what I'm less sure about is what I mentioned before. This is a game for Harry Potter fans. It's written to welcome Harry Potter fans into RPGs, but not really the other way around. As a person who didn't make it through the first book, my fault, not the books, just not my cup of tea. I've watched all the movies, but only once, and honestly, as I played, there were times where I could barely keep up. Other players in the group were like spouting spells from the books that happened to exist in the rule set and showing off their real live wands. And I was like, But Alexi as the GM was really masterful in portraying the wizard teachers, and he made it feel like it was straight out of the movie. So I was able to kind of glom onto that. But man, you know, when I play games, I'm always like, can I run this? I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think I could do it justice. Which is a real bummer in the Rogers household because when my wife read through this and found out that I wasn't really willing to run it for her, she was very disappointed, friends. Very, very disappointed.
Louise, would you say that you're a Harry Potter buff?
Oh, okay, here we go. Well, I grew up when the Harry Potter thing was like on like everyone was reading it. Everyone in my school was reading it, so I was reading it because peer pressure. And then I watched all the movies. I went to some like previews and everything. I ran down some stairs to get a better seat at the cinema. So I'm very into Harry Potter. I kind of dropped away from it after J.K. Rowling got a bit turfy on Twitter, but after that, it stays with you. You know, it was my childhood, and I know a lot about it. I'm a Slytherin, stuff like that. But it's interesting that you mentioned how it's hard to get people into this world who are not familiar with it, because that's something I struggle with a lot when I'm writing things that have IP. You know, I like to do that a lot. I don't release them because I like not getting sued as well. I might take a look at what was done with Hogwarts so I can do the same dance and get my stuff out there.
Yeah, I think Pottermore is a godsend for fanfic and people who want to kind of live and exist and create within the Harry Potter universe. And I'm super thankful that J.K. Rowling set that up after she made, enough money to buy a small country.
Do you think that the system as it's set up could do the kind of like late teen, high school romance things that you get? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, could you have kisses and kissing in the game? Or would that feel weird given the way the game is set up?
Well, because you can play first year through seventh year, I think a specific, like, let's play X year and all be similar age, as long as you have that and everybody's cool with it on the table, there's not a go kiss somebody move, but there's definitely friendship-oriented things that could be romantic at that age, at that kind of early teen, maybe even preteen. I don't know, I'm super old. What age do they like others? I don't know. Yes, kissing can happen, I think.
Okay.
I think they get into Hogwarts at 11 and leave it at 17. Something like that.
So okay. Calculate that out. Okay. All right. Louise, any other questions for Rich on this?
You mentioned that there's a house cup thing. Like, there's points. Some houses get more points than others. Is it a meta thing? Like, is it like a player-to-player competition? Or are you playing this in the fiction as well? Like, the houses are competing and you want your house to do better than the other player's house?
There are no specific rules that I've seen that talk about the cup itself. I think it's just a nice pacing mechanic and another mechanic to help people feel like they've got one over on one house or another particular house. But there is specifically house points, and there's a whole tracker going on, but it never actually goes anywhere that I saw.
Yeah, I was just wondering because, like, I'm happy with it as, okay, I just did something cool mechanic. I mean, you could just throw glitter at the players. It'll have the same effect.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
it would be worse, actually. But if it was actually a PvP thing, it would be very interesting because we don't really see that a lot in RPGs, especially ones that are wholesome like Hogwarts.
That's a really good point.
It's true. In the game we played, all 4 players were from different houses but the same year. So there was a lot of house competition going on.
Awesome.
Rich, overall thoughts? Anything else you want to say?
Overall, if you at all like Harry Potter, if you like Powered by the Apocalypse games, if you like games with a little bit of mystery, some magic, some friendship for the kind of younger age, definitely worth giving it a shot. If you only have a passing familiarity with Harry Potter, well, for me, I would play this game if a table needs another player, but I probably wouldn't go out of my way to play it or run it until I don't know. Maybe if I had like an assistant or like a GM whisperer, maybe if Louise would like be my Cyrano de Bergerac.
I've had some like serious considerations about getting another player as deputy GM. Swear to God. I've had it at a table once. Like, a friend didn't want to play, so she rolled dice for me and she kept notes.
Nice. But that's it. I think it's a really sharp design. It's fun to play. And if you like Harry Potter, you absolutely should give it a shot. Plus, it's the perfect price. Free of charge.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rich. Louise, let's hear about your August.
All right. Oh, it could have been a little better. I was signed up for 3 games. I ran 2, and then one of them got dropped off. So all that happened for me game-wise was that I ran Storm Riders from Codex Joy 2, if I'm not mistaken. I flavored it with Halloween-y stuff when I get there. And I ran Once Again Will Return, also from Codex. I was a very patriotic gauntleteer this month.
Mm-hmm.
But I did add up something extra to it. I made it a musical, but that's not what I'm going to talk about because I got to play one thing, which was Thirsty Sword Lesbians, a true shot that Bethany Harvey ran for me, and that's what I'm going to talk about.
I'm so excited to hear what this game is like.
The name is hilarious. Thirsty Sword Lesbians?
Yeah.
It's a great name.
All right, rock on. Tell me about this game, man.
So, it's still in beta. It was designed by April Kit Walsh. I signed up for the name. Like, as soon as I read it, I didn't need anything else. It was like, PBTA, okay, whatever. It's Thirsty Sword Lesbians. This could be a dungeon crawler and I wouldn't care. So yeah, it's a PBTA game about lesbian warriors of all sorts. Even though it says sword, half of them are not really sword fighters. They have swords, but they're flavored to their own playbooks. And there's like 2 different types of witches. There's a rogue kind of person. There's a swashbuckler. There's an Amazon warrior. It's all different types of lesbians. Like a whole menagerie. It's pretty free form. Like each playbook has a lot of flavor on its own. And then you just put them all together and try to come up with some sense of why all these different lesbians are together fighting against whatever they're fighting. For our game, I played the Beast, which is the Barbarian class. It's all the classic Barbarian, Conan in Strange Lands, facing off against unusual customs. You get extra benefits if you're blunt about stuff, or if you break stuff while you're doing things. But you're also a lycanthrope, which is just amazing. Other players were Swashbuckler, your run-of-the-mill, flirty, do-daring lesbian pirate, and a spooky witch, which means that she got like this really creepy familiar that casts spells for her. And in this player's case, she didn't have one eye, and it was like a spectral eel that lived inside her eye socket.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, you can tell that it was a jumble, and we did have to spend a minute talking about expectations because I went in hoping for sword and sorcery because I'd be wanting to play a character that was like I said, I wanted to play like a Conan style character for a while. One of the other players wanted lesbian pirates, and the other one wanted lesbian pirates in space. So we compromised and created this archipelago sort of setting with a lot of wind magic, but also pirates, and we lived in a place that wasn't named for the 2-shot that we played. We just called it the Pirate Lesbian Republic, or the Lesbian Pirate Republic. I don't remember how it was worded. And yeah, it's pretty standard PBTA in a lot of aspects. You can tell that there's some monster hearts in there. We have strings, and you use them to influence people. Romance is a big part of it. I mean, it says thirsty in the title. And there's also some Apocalypse World, as far as I can tell. I'm a total phony who never actually played the original text. I only played the spin-off, so I don't know what's actually in Apocalypse World.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a little mess as well. It's got conditions. And the usual, a whole bunch of stats. There's like daring, grace, soul, heart, and 2 others that I won't remember. You realize that it's 6 of them, which is something that I don't like. But they're there.
A lot of moves or just a few moves? How big is the basic moves set for this?
There's 2 types of moves, basically, which is heartstring moves or danger moves. Strings are called heartstrings. So it's your 2 pillars of play. You're thirsty and you have a sword, so you're going to kill things and fall in love. So for danger moves, there's only 3. One is a standard Defy Danger move from Dungeon World. There's 5 different ways you can defy danger based on what stat you're using. If you're being swift and elegant, you're using grace. If you're using cleverness and knowledge, you're using wit. Pretty straightforward. And there's the main action move, which is fight. And that's one of the problems that I had. Like, in a game that has sword on its title, I hope that combat would be a major part of it. But the fight move is basically inflict a condition, create an opportunity. It's basically flavor. There's no clock to tick on that tells you how close you are to overcoming a threat. So our GM, Bethany Harvey, they had to keep like pacing the combat entirely off the cuff. They just had to, okay, and now this giant octopus, this is a literal example, by the way. The giant octopus that you're fighting underwater with your pet dire duck. Now that you've managed to frighten it, it decides to retreat into the depths of the ocean. You've won the combat. So that was after a ton of like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. What am I supposed to do? There's like one of the options is take something from your opponent, and the swashbuckler was like, okay, can I take a tentacle away from the opponent? And Bethany was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. There's no HP. Which brings me to the like how you get hurt.
Okay.
There's a move called Suffer that doesn't have a direct trigger. Like it's not tied into fight or defy danger. It doesn't say that if you roll 6 minus Suffer. Suffer says in itself that when you get a staggering physical or emotional blow, you pick an option based on how many conditions you have, and there's a whole list. And the list is great, but we kept forgetting to trigger it. Yeah, I don't like moves that have soft triggers, like I call them, that are not really tied into a mechanical loop. It's just like, you better remember that when you get hurt, you should read this move. You can't just say that you roll on the grass. You have to read the move rolling on the grass.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's something that you get better at when you're playing the game for a long time, I guess. But I was hoping to be more straightforward with it. Like, it could totally be tied to the fight move, as far as I can tell. And the heartstring moves, there's like, I'm just count them now. There's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 of them. And there's 2 extra ones that I'm going to talk about because the first 4 are basically standard moves. It's like appeal to someone, like try to seduce them, figuring out a person, which has a really interesting like corollary to it. It's the standard mind reading move from any PBTA game that you say, what are you feeling towards so and so? And then you know it at a player level and a character level, but your character never actually asks the question because you're busy doing something else. But you get extra questions for this move if you are in physical conflict. And it's based on your playbook.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's supposed to lead, like, that's what we infer, that you're supposed to get into conflict with people that you want to figure out. So you should be sword fighting your romantic interests.
Oh, that's a really good... Ooh, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's not romance, but it has a kind of Princess Bridey feel to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty neat.
I think the Princess Bride really hits the spot. If they ever do a remake, a lesbian remake of Princess Bride, they could use the system as a base. So, for my playbook, The Beast, my extra questions were, what awakens the beast inside you, and how could I get you to kiss me? That's it. It's just so great.
Yeah.
I just wish that it was, like, easier to get into, because it's just, like, a couple of sentences below the move after everything has been explained about it already. We had to angle the fiction a lot towards getting the moves to trigger, you know? It didn't feel like we were stumbling upon them by just playing.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, whether the game has you naturally fall into it, or whether it's trying to lead you and trying to push you in a particular path.
Yeah, I think it's a dialogue. I think a lot of PBTA games have a lot of flavor to the way they're written, so that when you get into them, you know what you're going to do. Like if you're playing Mask, you know that you're going to fight crime, that you're going to deal with adults, that you're going to be a messy teenager. So you're naturally going to try to use your powers in a way that's not the best way yet, because you're just a kid, and then there's a move for that. But here, we kind of didn't know where to go because it's freeform. It doesn't really have a setting tied to it. We just have to come up with a lot of stuff. The playbooks themselves have all this inferred information around them, but there's nothing holding all of them together in the same place. There's no like cultural touchstone for the setting where there's a bunch of thirsty lesbians fighting each other and figuring out each other. Which brings me to this one move that's called Finally Kiss in a Dangerous Situation. It has one of the softest triggers I've ever seen. It just says like, when 2 people finally kiss after a period of tension, so and so. And it's like, you have to do all the groundwork for that to happen. You have to have attraction between 2 characters, and then you have to get into a dangerous situation together, and then you have to kiss. You have to find a moment in combat to get a kiss in. So it's just like, how do I do that? Because I've heard people playing any of the No Dice No Masters games, Dream Askew, Dream Apart, and I heard once a person complaining that, I didn't really read any of my regular moves. I just did whatever I wanted, but then I checked back and I'd done all of the regular moves by accident during the session because my playbook gave me all the flavor to step into those tones without actually thinking it. And yeah, I don't know how to do this because I'm not really designed for PBTA, and I just wish it was easier to get there because I really want to be kissing my crush in the middle of combat while the world burns around us. But it was a little hard to get there. I think the one time it was triggered was when the spooky witch kissed the serpent goddess who was trying to drown her in a pool. But that was
wow.
It was a really interesting setting. But that was just so they could get the +1 bonus that the moves give. They were kind of gaming the move to get a bonus to try to get out of that. The last point that I'll make about the romance moves is that there's this state called smitten. When you become smitten with someone, it's exactly what it means. You just you have a crush on them. It doesn't have any mechanical weight. It does affect other moves. There's some moves that if you're smitten with a person, you get some extra benefit or possibilities. But one thing that bugged me about it is that you have to answer a question when you get smitten. And it's only one question per playbook. So if you get re-smitten with the same person a bunch of times, how many times can you answer the question for my playbook, for example? What have you done that you are sure they view as uncouth? You answer that yourself. We've been on this boat for 3 hours, Sarah. I haven't had many opportunities to disappoint you.
Fair enough.
Because we were falling in and out of love so fast the minute we started playing, and then we realized, okay, maybe we shouldn't be getting smitten all the time. And that was something that we kind of we were left unsure about. But what I did playbooks are amazing. All of these, I could never imagine how many ways there was to make a lesbian warrior who's down for romance. There's if you're the beast, then you're going to be all about bluntness and trying to get people to get in touch with their animal side. But if you are the devoted, I think that's the name of the Joan of Arcish playbook, then you're all about duty and this pure version of love and affection. And it's just they're all so unique. I want to try all of them. I just wish there was a setting where all of them already exist, so I didn't have to make one. Because we did make a great setting, but I know that not a lot of people are into that when they get into a game. World building is not necessarily supposed to be tied into any game, I think.
Especially if it's really loose, yeah. If it had some structure to direct you. Rich, do you have questions before we go to get Louise's final thoughts?
Louise, could I play Rat Queens with this game?
Oh, that's I love Rat Queens, by the way. I read all of them.
Yay, me too.
I think, yes, if you do Rat Queens on Blast, they are way more into romance than they are written in the comic books, because I feel half of the party isn't really down for romance, and then the other half is just super down for romance. I forget the names. I'm terrible with names. I think Hannah is the one with the black hair, right?
Yeah, I think Hannah.
And the one with the blonde hair, the halfling.
Oh, she's down for anything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those two are always thirsty, looking for a paramour to bring home and to have hallucinogenic mushrooms with in the halfling's case. But the other two, not so much. But yeah, I think you could. It makes sense now that you mention it. That setting is pretty mix and matchy.
So Louise, overall, if you had to kind of give us your thoughts, recommendation on it, what would you say?
If the designer ever listens to this episode, I really don't want them to take this as oh, I hated the game. I loved it. I was just obsessed with it. I just feel it's in beta, so it has so much room to grow. It probably going to change so much, and I love that she put it out there, even if it's not everything she wants it to be yet. Because I'm not that person. I'm just so insecure, and it's so great to see feedback. So I like it a lot. I just wish it was more flavorful in the mechanical part. I think all the fluff is there. It's amazing. I want more of it. But I feel the moves are still too tied up to Generation 1 PBTA games. It's not really doing its own thing yet, I feel.
It makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. Well, I want to talk just briefly about a game I've talked about way, way, way too much on the podcast before. But let me give you my summary of the games I played. In August, off Gauntlet, I played Scum and Villainy, Die, did our action cards game, 13th Age, and then our hack of Mutant Year Zero for Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. And then on Gauntlet, I did Operators, hacked to be Night's Black Agents, and then Kuro and The Sprawl. And then we're in Season 4 of Worldwide Wrestling with the Gauntlet League Wrestling promotion. This is a thing for Nathan Pauletta's PBTA RPG of wrestling sports entertainment that we've been running for a long time. This is the 4th season, and these seasons have been 8 to 12 sessions per season. So it's got a lot of build up to it, and they are connected. Again, still, Worldwide Wrestling is one of my favorite games. It's action, drama, all together. It's melodrama. So I really dig it. It's a game that you still build really interesting, loose stories that come together, that the players are able to connect, that we've got stories and ideas and scenes that are happening off camera, like backstage, that we're getting a sense of where our characters' lives are at versus their performances on camera, and the intersection of those is really what makes that game just sing. Like, if a match goes badly, what is the fallout backstage? Or if it goes well, how does that change what's going on? And it remains a game where the matches are fun to watch. Because you do book the session, you may have to watch some other people do their scenes, and you can do the announcer and things. And it's still fun. It's still entertaining to do. So I really love that. But there are 2 things I want to talk about sort of related to this. One is that Nathan Paoletta has written a set of 2nd edition beta rules. They're fairly complete, and I thought, okay, going into this season, I would go ahead and use those. I talk a design thing here. I hadn't quite realized how much just a few small changes to the economy of a game could really change the feel. He took out or reduced the way that a particular currency called momentum arrives, and it really changed the feel. Like, it changed the feel. I'm not necessarily in a great way. It's one of those things where I only want to point to it in that I was kind of shocked at how much, because he didn't tweak it that much, but he tweaked it enough and like removed one option, and the game felt very different to me. Enough so that I'm uncertain what to make of it. And when I go to run Worldwide Wrestling at Gauntlet Con, I think I'm going to go with the original rules. I've enjoyed playing it with these new beta rules. I think there's some stuff there that's very cool. There's some changes he has made that I really like. But boy, it is a game that has a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that have dependencies on one another. And I don't think until I saw those changed, I realized how much was involved with that. So that's one thing I wanted to mention, just because it's stuck with me. The other thing is an issue that Rich and I have talked about and struggled with over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So I love Gauntlet League Wrestling. As I said, 4 seasons of this. 4 seasons with characters that have come. We've had characters carry over from season to season. We've had characters retire. We've had storylines build up and then change. There's a roster of previous wrestlers and so on. It's a great, huge bit of history. And I love that, but I also struggle to make sure that that's not a barrier for entry. That when new players come in, they're not feeling like they're left out. Because we do have players that have played it before and really enjoy their stories and reference those things. And I think it's a real challenge. I haven't yet cracked the code on that. I think Worldwide Wrestling has been good because a lot of the references have been in passing, and I have tried to acknowledge and celebrate them when players call them up, but not dwell on them, not like lean into them. So it's a little bit different from games where not having that knowledge really leaves you absolutely out in the cold. Like, you don't know what to operate. You don't know your choices are based on that. But boy, it is an ongoing thing, an ongoing challenge with these games now that some of us are starting to run 12-session games, or we're running multiple installments of a game. You know, I know, Rich, you're doing that with Star Wars Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
What has been your secret to not having that be a thing?
There are a couple things that I've tried to do specifically. Number one, I tell people when they come into Star Wars Saturdays, we are in the original trilogy of the movies. Those are the only things in because I'm talking Star Wars, so there's expanded universe canon that a lot of people can get hung up in. But I say the only thing that is absolutely true is that these movies are occurring in the timeline we're playing in. So that helps to give newbies a bit of grounding in, okay, what do things look like? What are the things that are going on around me in the setting? But then more specifically about people reincorporating characters. I've seen NPCs that are picked up as player characters. People who are like, I have two players, one who always plays Jawas and another who always plays Trandoshans. And it's lovely. They have like this extended family. But the second thing that I tried to do is pretend that as this is going on, it's a comic book, and I always look for those points where we need to insert the editor's note. Where's the asterisk that happens after this person just dropped a name, or I introduce a character where we need to go asterisk, editor's note, this character appeared in blah blah blah. And I'll not just say this character appeared in the Impulse Drive game from April 2018. I say this character is a so-and-so species who's motivated with so-and-so and has gone up against this other character over a thing. Just a 2 to 3 sentence synopsis of why this character is getting an ooh and ah from a particular player who's met them before, so that everybody can get clued in. You may or may not have an emotional attachment. You may not want to buy in based off my 3 sentences, but at least you understand the gravitas or the import or the why the hell does anyone else care.
It's a really good point, because my instinct when those kinds of things happen is to acknowledge them but then kind of keep moving because I don't want to lose pace.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that your strategy there of stopping and explaining is probably the better way, especially if you do it as tightly as 3 sentences, just to go, hey, here's what we're talking about, and it's pretty cool.
It's worth that level of investment. And another thing that I forgot to mention that I do is in the Character Keeper, I always have a tab called NPCs and Places. If I know the particular NPCs will be featured, I'll try to go ahead and preload them in. So that people can just kind of check that out whenever they've got a few free minutes, if they're not in a current scene. So they've already got like, oh, this is a thing that might come up. Why did Rich stick this particular person in here?
Louise, have you hit any games in the gauntlet where you felt like maybe that there had been things that had happened in the games previously that you didn't have contact with?
Well, I'm the perfect guest to talk about it because I've played Worldwide Wrestling and Star Wars Saturdays. What? While being neither a wrestling fan, neither a Star Wars buff. Like, I was none of them. My knowledge of Star Wars was basically like, I've watched the movies once. Like, it's basically rich with Harry Potter. I know what looks pretty. And look, what's the one species that has the red appendages on the head with the white rings? And that was my character.
Mm-hmm.
It was super smooth for me.
Togruta. Luis is the best Togruta.
I still have fond memories of it. And yeah, I could tell that there was a lot going on, but it didn't feel alien to me. It's like, I think the approach that Rich mentioned is the best thing. Like, give context to the people that want context, but move forward sufficiently fast so that people who don't really feel an attachment to it can just say, oh, okay, that's good for them. Nice that they're meeting this person again. Now, what's new for me? Because I hate inside jokes. Like, I absolutely hate them. I love making them, but I hate hearing them, and that's every person's experience. Because it's you can't explain an inside joke and have it be funny. It never is. It's like, oh, here's why this character's important.
Right.
It's not the same thing. So it's a balancing act, and I think you pull it off really well, both of you.
I think what I want to make sure I do now is maybe give also the chance for the player who's calling it up to say, hey, why don't you tell us about that? Or maybe try to get them to share the burden.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, I look for it. I've been in a couple of sessions of games that had a little bit of a long tail going on. It was my first time stepping into that world. And there were a couple of, oh yeah, moments where one person would say a thing, another person would go, oh yeah. And then that was it. They just moved on. That was good enough. It was like, what the hell? Am I watching Family Guy where the joke is that I make a reference that there is a piece of intellectual property that exists and that's the whole joke? Because that's not a joke. Like, give me context. So yeah, a little moment of that is worthwhile.
All right, when we have to cite the Family Guy, I think we have to move off to wrap this segment because that is a terrible show. So, World Wide Wrestling is awesome. It remains awesome. There's some issues I'm still playing with even after 4 years of doing it, and I kind of love that. So, we're going to go ahead and move on to our second segment. Hello, listeners. This coming October, the Gauntlet will once again be putting on GauntletCon, our online gaming convention. GauntletCon will include guests, panels, a dedicated Discord server for mustering, and lots of RPG sessions. Many will be streamed and recorded. GauntletCon runs October 24th through 27th with events throughout those days to cover many time zones. If you're interested in our newsletter for GauntletCon, you can sign up at gauntlet-rpg.com/gauntlet-con-2019. GauntletCon's a great gaming experience, and I hope you'll consider joining us as a GM, a player, or a viewer. And we're going to have Louise talk about the game that he's written and he's been working on. So, Louise?
I've been working on a game called Melody of a Never-Ending Summer. I know it's a mouthful, but I'm a sucker for... I just talk about inside jokes, and this is the biggest one of all, because if you acronymize it... It becomes MONS, which is Mons, and this is a game about brand-free mystical creatures, so I don't get sued by Nintendo, who you can meet and befriend and help grow. They're called Mons, because I'm not going to add the poke in front of them. It's
okay.
You do not put them in your pocket, is what you're
saying.
saying.
Yeah, no, no pockets involved. You explicitly cannot own them, and I'll get you why in a minute.
Okay.
It started as a game about collecting magical creatures, as one does, but then it slowly became about like being a teenager and spending summer somewhere else. You know, that experience that I wish a lot of people could have, but you know it from movies, that like this kid goes away, they spend summer in a camp or on a relative's house, and then they meet a bunch of people that they're never going to see again. They have a bunch of experiences that stay with them forever, and they get to really explore who they are outside of their everyday life. It's just that feeling of, I'm somewhere new. I can be who I want to be. I don't have to get bogged down by expectations. That game taps into that. Both in the we're free from burden, we can explore who we are, and that days are passing, and we're going to count every single one of them down. The game is based on a card and dice resolution mechanic that's like...
Oh.
It's interesting because it's not about beating a challenge as much as it is about keeping track of stuff. It's very, very hard to fail a roll in this game. Like, you're probably going to do whatever you want to do. And it's funny because the one time that a player missed a roll, we were all like shocked. Everyone just stopped and opened their mouths. And they're like, but there's another mechanic that allows you to make up for it. Because basically, these kids get in this ranch, and it's a rescue ranch for these magical creatures that exist in the world. They're not like exceptional. People know that they exist. It's pretty much Pokemon in that, like, there's a rat that can shoot electricity and that lives down my house. It's just there. The world just works around it. But they get there, and the game establishes from the get-go, like, you have anywhere from, I'll say a week and a half, I think that's the time I put for one-shots, to a month and a half. The game cannot be longer than that. You're here for the summer. Summer lasts this long. Then it's going to end. You have to go home.
Wow.
So you have a hand of cards from your deck. Each week you have 10 cards because I wanted to give some leeway on how you can spend them. And each suit of cards represent what activity you could be spending your day doing. 4 of them are exploring nature, training one of the mons that you've already brought into the ranch, going into the town. There's like a nearby town that you design with the other players that's full of NPCs and places you could visit. And just like taking the day off, basically. Going out for ice cream. You could romance one of the NPCs on your own terms because it's a GM-full game. So you basically do whatever you want. It's about really taking charge and creating memories for your own benefit and the other player's benefit. It's about making people cry, basically. 4th option is working on projects, which is like, we're going to build a tree house together, or we're going to turn around this barn that's in the ranch so that more mons can live there, or we're going to clean this pond. Basically, things that you have to work on a lot. And the core mechanic is basically you play a card, and you roll a dice against it, and if you roll successfully, you do what you want. But if you roll really successfully, like if you roll the exact number of the card, then you get a special day. So you get there's a journal part on the character keeper, and on the character sheet, that's a little journal, and you write, oh, today I went to the woods with so-and-so, and we saw like this golden bird flying by. That's your cue to say that, okay, this is going to be in your character's memory forever. This has just been a really great day. And you get to amp it up in your narration. And like I said, things are easy to do, but they're hard to accomplish. Like, you get to work on the project every day, sure, but if you don't keep at it, and if you don't ask for help, if everybody doesn't pitch in to build that treehouse, it's not going to get done before summer ends. So there's all of these different clocks and meters and tracks that you can see, and there's like, oh, I want to do everything. I want to train this mon so that I can rehabilitate it and see it off into nature again before I leave. Or I want to finish our treehouse. Or I want to grow closer to the other characters. And there's just not enough time. And I love making people feel things like that. That once you actually get to achieve one of these tracks, you have a special scene. Like I give some prompts on how you should do it, what you should be describing here when you announce your treehouse to everyone. You invite all your friends, the NPCs you have created. You go there with the other characters. There's this one NPC that comes with the game that's like an elderly lady that looks over the kids, and it's just tier material. I'm just pulling out all the heartstrings here, and it's all about slow burn because you're explicitly forbidden from speaking in character for most of the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Play alternates between vignettes. Like when you're playing a card, you're not saying, oh, and then we're in the woods now, and then we're chatting, and this is our characters talking. No. You're just saying, I went into the woods, I did this, and then I came back. You're not being your character in that moment. You're just narrating their life. Because it's to give the impression that this month is going by super fast. You're not going to remember every single day that you spent there. You're just going to remember the highlights.
Interesting.
So the scenes that you do get to talk in character is any scene that you accomplish a goal, like when it's time to bring a mom back to nature, everybody gets together to say goodbye to it. When it's time to finish a project, there's a party to celebrate it. When your bond track with another character fails, then you get a special scene with that character. You can go out and have a heart-to-heart and really talk it out. But most of the time, you're just describing things happening so that you can earn those scenes where you can really be in your character's shoes and explore who they are and how they're feeling. There's also like events. You can generate events because this game is largely based on Harvest Moon, which for people who don't know it, it's about taking care of a farm, and there's an actual calendar, and the calendar has like different events on it. Like this day is the village potluck. Everyone brings something, and then there's this gameplay changes to a different thing. Like instead of spending the day taking care of the farm, you're going to spend the day in town talking to the locals that have different dialogue on that special day and making things together. So I really wanted to capture that. So you generate these events, and like you're doing an everyday thing. Like, oh, today I went to the woods, and then the day after that I worked on the project a little bit. The day after that I met a new mon and I rescued it, brought it to the ranch. And then tomorrow is the star dance. And what does that mean? Your group decides. And it's like, okay, so it's a dance and it's going to be at night. Everyone is going to be there. You have to wear like glittering accessories, and then you're just in character for a while, and then you resume the regular play. And you think about, oh my god, what am I going to talk with this other character about when we get a scene together? And it's all about building up to those special moments. And it all ends in a scene that takes place on the village's train station where all the characters are going home. There is a procedure on how you say goodbye to each of the other characters. And then you get on the train and you say how this experience has changed your character and what kind of grown-up they get to be. And once everyone has said their goodbyes, we get a final scene of the whole group together as adults meeting again like 10 years later.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a very structured game so that you know how to hit all the notes that I intended for people to hit when playing this. It tricks you into playing it by giving you this assortment of magical creatures that you can interact with, because you can generate them using these tables that I came up with.
Okay.
There's like two different, there's one for shape and one for what elements that creature has. It's a whole thing. And then you generate it fairly easily. You can have a large variety of creatures. You're not going to get the same one twice unless you're really lucky at rolls. Through taking care of them, you're duped into having your character grow as a person as well. Because their training is not about making them the best fighter. It's about making them more self-reliant creatures, which is just a metaphor for teenagers. You're helping this fire-breathing dragon not breathe fire on the wrong things and learn how to fly. And in turn, you learn how to be more mature and self-controlled and more independent. And yeah, that's basically it.
It's interesting, the bittersweet nature to that. It reminds me, I mean, obviously I love Harvest Moon and those series. And I like that it's not Rune Factory where you have the things, going out and fighting for you. I love Gravity Falls. I know that's one of Rich's favorite animated series.
I love Gravity Falls. And
I love and hate that it's just there's time in the summer and that, that time comes to an end. And that bittersweetness there, it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, that's really what I was going for. Like, Gravity Falls is the best media touchstone to it that's not a video game, basically.
Nice. Way to pick that up.
Nice.
A little sharp.
So, people can find this on itch, right?
Yeah, it's on itch. It's pay what you want.
Anything else you want to say about that?
So one thing I really like about it is that I made character creation very straightforward. There's no stats, there's no classes. There's, nothing special about your character that makes them better at doing things. It's just they're a regular teenager. Because it's a game that's easy to get things done, so you don't really need stats or boosts or anything like that. Your resource for rerolling things is by cooperating with other characters and actually letting fails happen. So character creation is basically a personality quiz. You answer what you are glad to leave behind and what you're looking forward to and what you got to bring with you. And it's just a couple of questions, 3 or 4, that allow you to really flesh out a character. And I'm very proud of that. Since it's very much about character-to-character interaction, there's what I like to call the Tinder System. It's not in the rules because I don't want to get sued by Tinder either, but
right.
You have a very discreet way of signaling to other players whether you're into romance and which characters your character would be into romance with. You can either have a heart, that's on the character keeper. On the printable sheets, it's a little different, but it's the same idea. You either have a heart or a hand, and you can put a hand next to characters that you would prefer wouldn't feel attracted to your character, and a heart next to characters where your character could be attracted to them. And you can also just put a hand everywhere if you don't want to be romanced at all. So it skips on the whole, okay, I think my character is into yours, and it's awkward to have to say no to a person. Kind of breaks the flow of the game. Especially
That's
if someone
smart.
doesn't take the step to check for consent first. If they go straight for a scene where they're hitting on your character, it can get very uncomfortable. So I wanted to get something into that could facilitate romance and make people comfortable at the same time.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I've run into that problem before, and that's a nice, easy way to have that conversation without hurting anyone's feelings.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us about that. I'm very excited. I assume you're going to be developing that. You kind of got the raw form now. You're going to be working on it further?
I have some ideas for it on how I could expand it. One of my players, Sabine V, mentioned how it would be cool to have a formal system for figuring out how each of the creatures sounds. And I can't make any promises, but I think I will tap into it eventually. But I have some other stuff on my design queue that I need to get to.
Okay.
So it might just sit there for a while.
Excellent. Well, listeners, we're going to go to our third segment, Giving Me Life. It's giving me life. Louise.
I'm sorry. You sounded like Frankenstein's, Dr. Frankenstein. I don't actually have to say anything. So it's giving it life. So good. I went to see a musical this month. That's about this super talented young musician from the 80s from Brazil. He's called Cazuza. That's Cazuza. It was just I wept like a baby. This guy was amazing. He unfortunately passed due to he contracted AIDS during that whole crisis that happened. There wasn't any sufficient treatment available. He did get to write some more songs after he was diagnosed. He launched 2 amazing albums, but his brilliance was cut short. And it's just, I've been listening to his songs and they're all so good. He defined a generation of music in Brazil. And his mother was in the audience, and after he died, she started a foundation to stop young people from dying from AIDS, and it's one of the reasons why Brazil has one of the premier AIDS fighting programs in the world these days. And
oh, wow.
It was just like,
wow, that is
it was such a touching experience. It was really good.
Awesome. Rich, what is giving you life?
I don't want to follow that with my comic book talk. He's so aware. Luis is like classing up the joint, and here I'm going to talk about funny books, guys. So Jonathan Hickman is writing 2 miniseries that are resetting the X-Men universe within Marvel. Wow, how many times has the X-Men universe been changed forever? Like a bajillion times. But these 2 series, which are, 2/3 of the way done as of this recording, House of X and Powers of X. Jonathan Hickman is a pretty dense writer. He's written some really interesting comics, from indie stuff to the big 2. I'm an X-Men fan, but not an expert, and I'm really enjoying House of X specifically, but Powers of X as a companion is also fascinating because it's telling stories on 3 different layers, like now, 10 years from now, like 1,000 years from now, and it's plotting out all of these roadmaps for the mutant kind to actually stand up for themselves in a way that I haven't seen that promise fulfilled, right? It's always been mutants are an analog for Black people, for gay LGBTQI people. It's like, it's always this, they get beat down and they have a family, but this family is always getting beaten down, and the Sentinels and all this other stuff. And yes, those threats exist in House of X and Powers of X, but like, these people have a plan and they are putting it in action. And the mutant kind is weird and different in some ways. And I feel this little glimmer of hope. Like I am so excited to see how this ends and what the next chapter of the X-Men storyline will be in Marvel. It's
Awesome. So for me, it's kind of a weird meta thing is, as of this recording, last week, Monty Cook Games released their Consent in Gaming sourcebook, which is a book of safety tools for tabletop games. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's good. And there are 2 things that have given me life from it. One is that we're seeing a major publisher seriously invest in this and seriously talk about this, because I've seen a bunch of new games recently from big publishers that have problematic elements or really difficult PvP things that have almost nothing in the way of safety tools. The new book from Mutant Year Zero, Elysium, is really dark and kind of unpleasant, and their safety tool is, hey, maybe stop and talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's the extent of it. So I'm really glad to see major publishers and a lot of people talking about it. And also, if you follow any of this thread, you can find lots of people to block on there. So if you want to find who not to follow on Twitter, go and check for some of these raging insert expletive here on some of those threads. People who are reacting to the idea that maybe you should be talking about what you're going to be doing at the table to make people comfortable. So I'm really hopeful what this might mean in the next few years. So that's what's giving me life.
Nice.
I'm with you. It's a really great thing that they've done.
Listeners, that's our show. If you're interested in the Gauntlet, you can follow us on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. Of course, we have a Patreon that supports this podcast and a variety of others. If you support that at the $8 and above level, you can get access to our Slack, early access to the games that we have in the online calendar for the Gauntlet. And then if you sign up at even the lower level, you can get our monthly magazine Codex, which is pretty freaking awesome. We've just got the Codex Big Collected hardcover, came in a physical version, and I am just stunned at it. I mean, they look nice in PDF. They're really cool in PDF. They're really awesome. When you see them in a physical format, it kind of blows your mind. And that's just year 1. We're into year 3, going on 4, and it is still amazing. So consider checking it out. If you like this podcast, you could rate, subscribe, leave a comment. That actually does help us. So it would be really cool if you did that. Rich, thank you for coming in and being a last-minute co-host for us. I appreciate you doing that.
Happy to be your pinch hitter, Lowell, anytime.
Baseball reference. There we go. Sports ball.
Ding!
Louise, thanks so much for being willing to do this. I'm just so excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my first podcast.
Sherry says that you are her twin player because you and she both love the same fashion and the same elements, and you're always taking each other's pictures when you go to find character pictures. So.
Oh, I miss Sherry.
Listeners, that's our show.